Alrighty, here we are, ready to roll. I know we're just getting up and running here. There we go. Looks like we're live. Let me pull up the chat here. And we'll see who shows up. Cube Noob, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And while we get started here and wait for a few people to arrive, I am going to... Hello, Maddie Oof. Hello, Bullet Point. It's great to have you back. OM Guy, welcome. Jonathan Day, Blacklit Star, Bubba Jess. Lots of people rolling in. Bradley Bearface, that's a good name. Is it like a bear, like a creature, the bear? Or bear is in like you got nothing on your face? I guess that would be B-A-R-E face. Steve Bermeo, welcome. Somebody already disliked? How's that? Why? How does that happen? That's rude. Hello, Malin, welcome. I'm sure you were sitting there quite eagerly, refreshing the page. Like he said. I can't even, oh, am I edgy yet? That your name is really hard to parse, actually. I won't lie, because it's all lowercase. Caleb, hello. Indigo Whisper, I'm sorry, it is pretty early. So yeah, obviously this is going to be a very spoiler-full chat. I've said it in the title. I've said it in the video description. I'm going to say it right here, right now. I'm going to be talking all about Star Wars The Last Jedi and my opinions of that film. And there's going to be nothing left untouched. So if you have not seen it yet, do not watch this. Do not watch the live stream. If you're watching the VOD, do not watch the VOD until you've seen the film. Unless you are really, really, really sure that you don't care about the film or spoilers for the film. I mean, you're all adults, maybe, probably most of you. So I will leave that up to you, but really, it's gonna be spoiled, so just bear that in mind. All right. Who else we got going on here? All kinds of people here. Bubba Jess, I already noticed you. I said hi. I tapped that. Welcome. It's great to have you here. I know you just came back from watching the film, so I expect you to have some good input. And I know you're a big Star Wars fan, so to say the least. Carson Walter, welcome. Who else? Miriam, hello. All the way from Mexico. That's really cool. Kieran Clark. 5 in the morning, you don't want spoilers. So yeah, get out of here. Thank you for showing up, but don't stick around. Thank you, Indigo Whisper. Yeah, you can come back and watch the VOD when once you've watched the movie. Feel free to leave comments later. Mr. T, watching your first live stream at the airport. That's great. Oh, it's nice to have you here. Somebody's asking how long it is. Is that it? Oh, how long was the movie? Yeah, Steven, sorry. Yeah, it's a little over 2.5 hours. 2 hours, 35 minutes, I believe. Hello, Spinoza. Andrew, welcome. All right, thank you. Am I edgy yet? Yeah, thank you for showing up. I'll see you next time, maybe. Now, I know for a lot of you that, yeah, this is pretty early in terms of like the day that the film comes out, basically. But I wanted to do this stream now because it's all still relatively fresh in my mind, and it gets harder and harder to talk about a film the further away you are from it. Really, I watched the movie last night, like 24 hours ago. I would have preferred to do this stream then, but it just wouldn't have worked out. So I'm doing it now in the hopes that at least some of you have watched the film, and those of you who haven't seen the film can always come back and watch the VOD. So really, I just wanted to get this done while it's all still fresh in mind. Hello, E. OM Guy, let me tell you right now, go watch the film. Go watch the film before you watch this. it's not worth having everything spoiled for you. You really want to experience it properly the first time through, because it's a surprising movie in a lot of ways, and I think you really need to organically experience it and go through the process of like, okay, what did I just watch? Now let me unpack this a little bit and really think about it. Bradley Bareface, thank you. There is just so much to talk about, Malin. There's a lot. And Maddie Oof, you've never watched Star Wars of any kind at all? Well, then maybe you're okay just watching this if you really don't care about it at all. But I think you should go watch them. I think you should go watch them all and then go watch The Last Jedi and then come back to this. So, what was my unspoilered impression? Like, for people, unspoilered is in like without giving away any spoilers. Yeah, Miriam, there are a lot of spoilers out there. Although I was not spoiled on this one going into it. And I found that there are less spoilers about in general. And I think that's because a lot of the surprising things about this film are very hard to spoil in just a couple of short words. It's not the kind of thing where you can just leave a comment on social media or whatever and ruin it, because what's surprising about this film runs a lot deeper, I think. It's very fundamental to the film and sort of the direction that the series is headed. So that's my feeling anyway. But if you want the TLDR version, like the really quick version of my completely unspoilery impression of the video, this is all you're going to get before we dive into spoilers. I liked it. I was hoping they would blow it out of the water. I don't think they did. It's not a 10 out of 10 film for me. But the more I think about the film, the more I like it. I think it's the kind of Star Wars movie that, well, it's the kind of Star Wars movie that's never been made before. It is a film that that is full of bait and switch. It's all about subverting your expectations of what a Star Wars film is and should be. And it very clearly has an agenda and a direction for where this series is going to go, where the saga is going to go. And I think it was a film of many, many really, really good moments, really cool character interactions and interesting revelations. But they were all hung on a really, really weak skeleton, like a paper-thin plot that was just bad. And that doesn't necessarily drag it down, but it could have been a 10 out of 10 film if the plot and this overarching story had been up to snuff. But as it was a lot of interesting ideas, concepts being put forward, and character development that wasn't matched by the actual goings-on in the film, in my opinion. What's going on in chat here? Yeah, there were plot holes. There were also a couple of really, really dumb scenes. Just a couple that just bothered me, that didn't need to be there. I felt actually it was a little bit flabby. Like I felt it could have been edited much more tightly. Yeah, more cerebral. That's right, Andrew. Definitely. There's a lot more symbolism, a lot more layers going on there. And we'll talk about that here tonight. Brady, the walrus creature and Milk luking it. Milk luking it? Did I just say that? Luke milking it? I didn't mind that. Like, one thing this film does well is humor. I actually thought that it was very, very funny. It was the funniest Star Wars film I've ever seen. So, okay, there's a lot of questions, and you guys could probably continue throwing them at me here. And we will have a discussion time a little bit down the road. But what I've done is, because I'm a big nerd, I've prepared some notes here. I've tried to sort of organize some of my thoughts about the film, and I've lumped it mostly by themes, actually, because this is a very, strongly thematic film with some very strong recurring themes that run throughout it. And I think what I'm going to do is just go through those sort of explain how I feel about it and some of the examples from the film. And then I'll get your guys' feedback and we can just sort of chat about it a little bit, workshop it a little bit. And I should also point out that I have not watched any reviews. I've not read any reviews. In fact, I've tried to stay away from other opinions on this film. I've tried to keep my impressions virgin for this discussion with you guys tonight, because I wanted to be able to provide my candid opinions about it without being sort of clouded by what other people are saying. So I haven't really paid any attention to the buzz about the film, other than the fact that I know it's been critically lauded. Like, a lot of movie critics like it. I have seen that. But in terms of public opinion, my understanding is it's quite divisive. I completely understand why, but I haven't done a whole lot of other, or any really, reading about it. So you're welcome for saving myself for you. I wanted it to be special, our first time here. Absolutely. Okay, so oh, before we get started, I brought along a beer tonight, and you guys, you know, this is going to be a very casual thing. I'm not a film critic by any stretch. I'm just a big Star Wars nerd, and I get really excited about this stuff, and I wanted to talk about it with you guys because I know a lot of you are big Star Wars fans as well. But don't take any of this as gospel. Like, this is all opinions. And we're just going to be kind of just chatting, shooting the shit here, right? So feel free to take this moment to go get yourself a drink of some kind, whether you want something with a little kick to it or something a little more calming, maybe some tea or something if it's late where you're at. Today I'm going to be drinking this, which I think just looks super duper cool. It says, I don't know if you can see it, the autofocus is not focusing really, but it says Limb from Limb. And it's got this awesome artwork of these lumberjacks fighting against a tree stump monster. It's like some kind of crazy, I don't know, lumberjack battle scene. And it is a rye PA. And the little description here is pretty good. It says here, from time to time in Lumber Town, when the air is still, you hear it. The hacks, the axes, groans of war in distant forests grim, when men, women, and foolish youth fight nail and tooth and spirit. So on and on the jacks advance and strike them down limb from limb. I just thought it was a ridiculous kind of little story on a beer bottle. And I thought it was really cool artwork. Okay. Hello, guys. Those who are just showing up, it's great to have you here. Aaron, James, Adam. Hello. Star Wars Adam. You meant Star Wars. I'm sure you did. I'm sure you weren't trolling at all. Lime from lime. No, limb from limb. We'll talk about Rose, Joey. We'll talk about Rose. Or I will, and then we can all talk about Rose. Okay, so let's just open this up. Pour some out. I expect it to be quite hoppy, but we'll see. I brought my Star Wars glass, as you can see. All right, let's okay. This isn't a beer tasting video, but since I'm here, I'll just show it off. It's a really beautiful kind of amber color. It's a bit cloudy. It's quite a frothy head. It smells very hoppy. Okay. So, oh, and hey, we'll break this up partway through with with these things right here. These are trading cards, evidently. Topps trading cards. I went to a special fan event showing, like the first showing in my town, and they gave these out at that event. And so I don't really know what's in here. I haven't opened it, obviously, but apparently they're giant trading cards. But partway in, we can do that just to break it up a little bit. You guys can remind me if I forget. Okay, so let's get ourselves started here, shall we? So, yeah, I think this is going to be a divisive movie, and it's my understanding that that's sort of how it's panning out, at least among fans of the series. And that's largely because, as I mentioned, it subverts a lot of tried and true Star Wars tropes. It constantly presents situations where you think, okay, I know where this is going to go because that's how Star Wars does things. And then it goes completely the opposite direction. And that happens again and again throughout the film. At least that's how it was for me. And that could be very frustrating if you're coming into the film with certain expectations or certain desires. And it makes sense that you would, because Star Wars has always kind of been the same, really. Like, there are certain themes that you can expect to see in a Star Wars film. And this movie says, no, we're moving past that. We're growing beyond that. And I think this movie has a fairly clear agenda and a fairly strong vision of what Star Wars can become, what it can grow into as a series. And I think this was generally a more mature and, like someone said in chat, a more cerebral Star Wars film than any that has come before it. And it's really layered with symbolism and just chock full of more complex characters, or characters that break the mold from the point of view of Star Wars anyway. I do think it had its problems. As I mentioned, I think the plot was plodding, but also the pacing was very frenetic. Like, it was constantly jumping and cutting back and forth from one scene to another, yet the movie still managed to feel slow in some parts. I think there were like way too many spaceships and hallways and things, even for a Star Wars film. And that chase between the two big cruisers, don't even get me started. I will be talking about it, but we'll save that for a little bit later down the road here. But that was awful. That was legitimately awful. And plot holes. There were definitely plot holes. There's no doubt about that. But what shined throughout was the character interactions, the growth of the characters, the performances put in by the actors, I thought were pretty good all throughout, and the fact that it has so much to say. There were a lot of firsts for the Star Wars franchise, and it really did feel like a more mature take on Star Wars and a glimpse of where this series can grow to. So now that I've said that little preamble, I'm just going to catch up on chat here, because it's always a matter of talking and thinking at the same time, and reading. Yeah, a lot of people dislike the Casino City plot. It felt a little shoehorned in, but I actually kind of liked it. I came around on it, and I'll talk about that. The Leia in space scene. Oh my god. We will talk about that. Garbage. That's the short answer for that. Total garbage. What have we got here? Yeah. It might have been trolling. I don't know. Elisa, welcome. Alyssa, sorry, you told me last time. It's Alyssa. Hated a lot of it, loved a lot of it. Yeah, that seems to be where a lot of people are at. Finn and Rose, yeah, there's lots of good stuff to talk about here. Reach out, Nick. How do you feel? Let me just reach out to you guys here. Oh, I feel the Force. That was such the interaction between Luke and Rey was just fantastic throughout the whole movie, really. I have to say that was one of my favorite parts, and I'm glad they nailed that. I just love that scene where Luke's like, reach out, and Rey reaches out, and Luke's tickling her fingers with the little leaf or whatever. she's like, do you feel that? And she's like, yeah, I feel it. And he's like, that's the Force. And then smacks her on the hand. I thought that was great. I thought that was great. Snoke's weak death, yes. Garbage. Straight garbage. Okay, so I gotta try this. I haven't tried it yet. You guys, before we really get rolling here, I know it's been 25 minutes, so we've been rolling for a while, but I'm going to go over to www.twitter.com, and I'm going to post about this stream. Come hang out with us and talk hashtag, because I'm young and hip and I use hashtags. Star Wars The Last Jedi on my live stream. Yeah, that's what it is right here. Warning. Spoilers galore. There we go. Excellent. And for some reason, the preview still says Star Duo live, because the preview never seems to update for a while anyway, after I change out all the video info, so, which is a shame, but anyway, there's that. Okay. Northern Whisper, welcome. Oh, you like Snoke's death? Interesting. We can talk about that. I have some things that I liked about it, but well, yeah, we'll get there. When will I start twitching? I don't know. I keep saying I'm going to start streaming on Twitch, and I will. I 100% will. But I do have to take the time to set up my page there, like my profile, and figure out actually how Twitch works. Mr. T and Malin becoming fast friends in the chat, it looks like. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about, like I said, I organized this by themes because I felt that the film was so strongly thematic that it didn't really make sense to talk about it like in a linear fashion, like from start to finish, because the plot is just kind of garbage and a mess anyway. But thematically it was very strong. So the first theme that I wanted to talk about is one that recurs again and again throughout the film, and that is letting go of the past. This is clearly something that a lot of characters struggle with, and the movie was very self-aware about this because there's many characters literally talking about it, like well, Kylo to one extreme, you know, he's all about killing the past violently, right, or expunging it as best he can. But also in more subtle ways, Yoda, for instance, and Luke, and the whole burning of the Jedi tree situation, which I thought was just such a good scene. So maybe that's somewhere we can start. We can start off talking about guilty Luke. So there was a lot of speculation when The Force Awakens came out, and it turns out that Luke has been in hiding for all this time, and people were wondering, oh, why would he go into hiding, you know, and why would he just turn his back on the galaxy and all the people that need him, like his sister, you know. And people were saying, oh no, Luke wouldn't do it out of shame or out of fear, you know, he must have had another reason, you know, he was trying to find the roots of the Jedi so that he could make things right again. But we find out in this film that straight up he just ran. He ran from his problems. He went to the island, which is the planet I forget the name of, but Ardskellig, I believe, is the name of the island in real life. But he went to the island to die. He literally says that in the film. So Luke has, he's running from his mistakes with Kylo, and really he's feeling sorry for himself. If you think about it all throughout that, he is basically sulking. He is dealing with his problems, but not in the right way. And so when Rey comes to challenge him about all that stuff, he's quite defensive about it, obviously. He's quite resistant to going to help the resistance. And, you know, he gives her this sob story about how the Jedi are, you know, were actually these terrible people ultimately. Or not terrible, but they were not the heroes that everyone makes them out to be. And he really has no intention of leaving that island or getting involved in galactic affairs ever again. And his story kind of goes through an interesting, or his character goes through an interesting growth, largely spurred by the arrival of Rey, but then also Force Ghost Yoda showing up, and that whole exchange, which you know, is a wonderful. I really like that scene. I figured before watching this film, I figured we would either see Force Ghost Obi-Wan or Force Ghost Yoda. And so that is one of the few things about this film that I predicted correctly. But we did get to see Yoda. And there's a really profound exchange between the two of them. And it becomes apparent that, pardon me, that Luke can't really let go of the past. Although he does at the end obviously go to confront his past. He goes to confront Kylo in an attempt to right his wrongs. But this ties into another theme, which is that Luke and Yoda are having this moment where they're watching the tree burn, right? Because Yoda brings down the lightning strike on the Jedi's sacred tree, which contained the sacred texts, and Luke was going to burn it down anyway, but then he sort of had a last minute change of heart maybe, but then Yoda blew it all up anyway, so lit it on fire. And Yoda says something, and I'm going to get this wrong, but he says something to the effect of, you know, such is the burden of all masters, which is to see their students or their disciples, or whatever terminology he uses, grow beyond them. And what he's talking about is that, you know, Luke still feels beholden to the Jedi traditions to some degree, and he's a kind of a relic of the past, as is the whole Jedi Order, the formal Jedi Order. But obviously Rey has the ability to grow beyond what the Jedi have been, and Kylo potentially too, right? So and that scene where Yoda and Luke are literally just sitting there watching the most ancient history of the Jedi burn to the ground. I think that was a wonderful scene. It was a surprising scene. And I just thought it was so good. I just loved it. Yeah, the sacred text did survive. I tapped that. They do show them briefly at the end of the film. Someone, probably Rey, I guess, smuggled them onto the Falcon without Luke knowing, apparently. But as far as Luke was concerned, they were burning. What Yoda knew, we don't know. He probably knew that Rey had taken them, I suspect. But he's so cavalier about it. Yoda is, you know, he says, you know, basically, there's nothing there that is so precious or so critical that you couldn't, you know, learn for yourself or find for yourself. He says there's wisdom there. You know, he acknowledges that, but he believes that it's not what's important. The living force is what's important, right? So that is obviously a big piece of letting go of the past in this film. And now I'm going to go to chat. All right, callers, leave your call in. Let me know what you think. I'm just going to try and catch up on chat here a little bit and see what you guys have been saying about this stuff I've been prattling on about for the last couple of minutes here. Yeah, talking about how, yes, those texts did survive. Yeah, I tapped that. I think Yoda probably does know that those were... Oh, Northern Whisper. He says there's nothing in those books that she does not already possess because she literally has them. Maybe. Yeah, maybe that's what he was getting at there. That's a good point. I didn't think of that. But I think the thrust of it was that while there's wisdom to be had there, maybe it's not all the answers that you need or that are important about the Force. Hello, Simon. Petro says, so Joey said, so this unintentionally established that Jedi can still kill and protect as a ghost due to Yoda lighting the books on fire. It's true. That was an interesting point, wasn't it? Because up until this point, we've never seen a Force ghost enact any kind of corporeal activity, right? Have any impact on the material world. But Yoda has no problem calling down the lightning to strike that tree. He does it just no problem. So, yeah, so this is the first time that Force ghosts have been able to affect reality, which offers some interesting speculation or possibilities for a Force ghost Luke, perhaps, in the third film, or the ninth film, the third film of this trilogy. Fork Master wants to know what I think about the Snoke throne room scene and fight. I will get to that. Underwhelming reveal of Rey's parents. Okay, that is a good segue here because that also ties into the theme of letting go of the past. You know, Rey has this driving need throughout these two films of this trilogy so far to find out about her parentage, her heritage. And she feels the need to be something special. She has an abandonment syndrome, right? She was left on this desert planet for dead, basically. Or not for dead, she was left with a junker, slaver, or whatever. But, and so she feels that an important part of her identity is tied up in her parentage, and she's obviously looking to find something special there. And this is brought to her attention by Kylo, that she is constantly searching for this, and she's looking for parental figures in Han, in Leia to some extent, and now in Luke. You know, she's looking for guidance. She's looking for that parent figure that she never had, and in doing so, she's clinging to the past as opposed to looking ahead. And her arc in this film is obviously discovering that her parentage is irrelevant, that it doesn't matter. It's not about the past. There is a really cheesy Mewtwo quote from Pokemon the first movie, which I'm gonna probably mangle here, but it's basically like, the circumstances of one's birth don't matter. It's what you do with the gift of life that defines who you are. And yes, that's right. I just quoted a Pokemon movie in a Star Wars discussion. Outnerd that. Fight me. But that's really the thrust of that development for Rey. Northern Whisper says Forced Ghost Luke will be in third for sure. Yeah, he will be. I'm sure. You were worried that Rey saw herself in the dark cave, and that was hinting she was Force conceived, says Malin. Yeah, that was my initial interpretation of that as well, right? Because obviously Anakin was conceived by the Force, midichlorians, whatever you want to say, and carried by by Shmi. But and I thought maybe that's what they were getting at with Rey as well. So anyway, as part of this journey of Rey's, yeah, she goes into the dark cave, the Dark Force cave, which is obviously an analog for the cave on Dagobah, where Luke went and confronted Darth Vader, who turned out to be him, his own face in the mask, which was obviously revealing something about his parentage and his potential fate. But Rey just saw herself when she went into this dark cave. I actually liked that scene a lot. I thought it was wonderfully weird. We've never seen anything like that in a Star Wars movie before. It was very surreal, with that like infinite regression of Rey's, snapping her fingers and that kind of thing. It was a novel scene. Howdy from Texas, Jonathan. Welcome. I tap that says that, okay, so anyway, this all comes down to the fact that Rey finds out that her parents were nobodies, at least allegedly, according to Kylo, who admittedly has a motivation to say some mean stuff at that point because he's trying to break her down. At the point that he reveals Rey's parentage, he's trying to mentally break her down and weaken her so that she will join him. So he has a very strong motivation to say something to her that's going to be as damaging as it can be. And telling her that she is a nobody, he literally says, you have no place in this story, which is incredibly self-aware and like almost fourth wall breaking in an ironic sort of way, because obviously she does have a very strong place in this story. But yeah, I liked that scene between the two of them where he's trying to convince Rey to join him, and Rey's saying, no, you have to, you know, come to the light or whatever. It's a very classic Star Wars moment of two Force users trying to turn one another, but it has so many more layers of subtlety than we've seen before. And as a side note, this isn't necessarily about letting go of the past, but I really like the way Kylo approaches that conversation, where he starts off strong, you know, and he's like, you know, you're basically a nobody, your parents were nobody, but join me and we can, you know, rule the galaxy together. And then at the end of all that, he says, please, which is such a Kylo thing to do, because that's perfect for his character. He is such this conflicted, uncertain character, who acts all strong, but really he's deeply troubled. And I really like the addition of that please line and the delivery of that. I thought that was just perfect for his character. Very consistent. But I guess where I'm going with that is that it's possible that the revelation about Rey's heritage is fake, was a red herring. It's possible that she does have some, you know, illustrious ancestry, that there's more going on there. That would certainly be more in keeping with the themes of the Star Wars films, because the Star Wars films have always been about family, and you know, specifically the Skywalkers, but the idea of carrying on some kind of lineage, you know, and this flies in the face of that. So, you know, the typical Star Wars thing that we would expect, that everyone is primed to expect, is that Rey has some significant parents. But I think because the theme of letting go of the past runs so deep through this movie, and also the theme of the power of the nobody, the idea that it doesn't matter what your past is, it's about what you do with your present and your future that matters. I think those themes run so deep in this film because that's really where the series is going. And so I am inclined to believe Kylo when he says that Rey's parents were nobody. Carson, the image of shirtless Kylo haunts your nightmares. You can't deal with that. You can't deal with a cut man, cut dude looking good. He's like, oh, that scene was funny, you know, where Rey's like, hey, can you put on a cowl or something like that? Like, she's obviously a little bit distracted by his physique, and he's like, no, I've been working out, looking all swole. I agree, Northern Whisper, Kylo is the best character of the new ones. I completely agree with that. Malin says it wouldn't be nightmares for her. That's fair. Dude looks good. Dude looks really good. Mr. T, all right, thanks for joining us. I'm sorry that you're not going to be able to watch all of it, but you can watch it later. You can watch it in the archive. Those dark side nips. I can't say I was super distracted by his nipples, but he was very broad. He seems like he'd be such a skinny dude. So I wonder if they had some enhancement going on there. Some CG, I don't know. Either that or he's just been hitting the gym. It's okay, Malin, I'm with you. He's a good looking dude. I mean, he's a weird looking dude. Like he's got like the kind of big nose and stuff, and like, but it works. Like he makes it work. I don't know. Okay, so, gosh, where were we at here? Right, so letting go of the past. Rey has to let go of her quest for her parents, because I think what the movie is saying is it doesn't matter, that it's not about your heritage. It's about what you do with what you're given. And then obviously Kylo's hatred of the past. This also ties into this theme of letting go of the past. So, you know, he is actively trying to expunge the past. He wants to, pardon me, kill Luke. He wants to kill Leia. He's already killed Han. These people that he feels have wronged him or hurt him or are holding him back. And he also kills Snoke because he believes Snoke is part of the past as well, right? So we might as well talk about that Snoke death scene here, I guess, since you all seem to be talking about it. And since it's one of perhaps the most divisive scenes in the movie. So there's the scene, right, where Kylo brings Rey to Snoke, and Snoke is sitting there. He is the Emperor, 100% in that scene. You know, he's a more suave Emperor. He's wearing his like bathrobe, his lounge robe, and he is sitting in his throne, and he's all threatening, and you know, there's so many similarities, obviously parallels in that scene to Darth Vader bringing Luke to the Emperor. I mean, it's very intentional, almost a little bit ham-fisted, I would go so far as to say. He's got his crimson Imperial guards surrounding him. You know, there's this climactic space battle going on outside. Well, it's not a battle, really. It's not even climactic, really. But, you know, the cruisers. I think at that point, the Imperial cruiser is shooting the little rebel transports that were trying to get away, I think. I don't remember exactly. Maybe that happens after, whatever. But, you know, Snoke is sitting there with Rey's / Luke's lightsaber at his side, at his right side on the chair, just like Emperor Palpatine. So, you know, Snoke tortures Rey for information or whatever, and then he prompts Kylo to execute her, basically. And he exhibits his immense power, you know, and shows Rey that she's nothing, that she's got nothing compared to him. That she was a pawn in this whole thing, and Snoke reveals that that he basically manipulated Kylo and Rey into having this connection, and he planted the thought in each of their heads that they could save the other. So he planted the vision in Kylo's head that Rey would turn to the dark side. He planted the image or the idea in Rey's head that she could turn Kylo to the light. So he manipulated that whole thing, and he's very, very proud of himself. And he demonstrates what is a typical Star Wars villain cognitive bias, which is overconfidence. You know, it's literally said, your overconfidence is your weakness. You know, like that's Luke talking to the Emperor. And Snoke is 100% that all over again, even though he claims not to be. He claims to be the great manipulator. Yes, Carson, he is wearing a golden pimp cloak. It really is quite the lounge robe. Yeah, why didn't we get a backstory from him? Malin wants to know. I think, okay, two thoughts. One is that there is story yet to come about Snoke. There will be revelations about it, about him, in the third film of the trilogy. I think there has to be to some degree. But I think more to the point is that it doesn't matter. His story is not important, I think, is what the movie is saying. That's why they can get away with killing him off in the second film of the trilogy. It's not about Snoke. It's about letting go of the past, and Snoke is part of the past. So I think that's the movie trying to make a statement that this isn't your Pappy's Star Wars, where the Emperor is the all-important figure here manipulating everything. This is about the new characters and the franchise moving forward. That's my feeling anyway. Snoke is Jar Jar calling it, yes. Oh, Jar Jar's child, maybe. Yeah, so the question then becomes, is the death of Snoke disappointing in this film? And so the way it plays out, just in case you've forgotten somehow, is that Snoke is so sure in his visions as to what's going to happen. He says you're talking to Kylo, who is holding his lightsaber at Rey's face, basically. He says you're going to turn your lightsaber and you're going to ignite it and you're going to defeat your greatest enemy. And he is so certain that that is Rey, that Rey would be Kylo's greatest enemy, and he's going to murder her there. But obviously that's not the case, because Kylo instead manipulates the lightsaber sitting next to Snoke on his chair, turns it to him and ignites it and bisects him. And Snoke did not see that coming. So you could say that it's disappointing that Snoke didn't see it coming, because he's such a mastermind and he would have obviously known. I think there's some merit to that argument. I think it is a little bit disappointing that he went out like a bitch, because he really did. Let's be honest, he died like a bitch. But the whole point is that it was his hubris, right? That was his undoing. It was his overconfidence. And that is a very well-worn Star Wars trope. Sorry. As Northern Whispers points out, the great thing about Snoke's death is that it leaves carte blanche for the third movie. It leaves it open. We don't know what's going to happen, because Snoke's not calling the shots anymore. Kylo's now in the position of power. He's incredibly unpredictable, as we know. So I think that the death of Snoke, again, like going into this movie, I was having a chat with one of my good friends, and I was still thinking in terms of Star Wars tropes. And I was thinking, well, we'll see a little bit of Snoke in this film. They'll tease a bit more about him, but it won't be until the third film that we'll have the confrontation with Snoke, as the Palpatine surrogate. We'll find out a bit more about him in that film, and Rey will confront him and all this. But they brought that up to this film, and they killed him. I did not see it coming. So this is a very good example of the film subverting classic Star Wars tropes. I think that very few people, maybe you, whoever you are out there on the internet, maybe you're so smart and you guessed it. You're so insightful that Snoke was going to die in this film. But I certainly did not expect it. But in retrospect, I'm glad that he did. I think the death of Snoke is a very good thing for the series. I don't really like the way it happened. Like, I get the idea that Kylo was supposed to be thinking in generalities, I guess, when he was thinking about the lightsaber, or that Snoke's vision was clearly only provided to him in generalities, and that allowed Kylo to pull the wool over his eyes, basically, and murder him. But I thought that was maybe a little bit of a cop-out, I guess. And I think he died too easily, but I'm glad that he did die in this film. And then the ensuing fight. Okay, actually, before I get into the ensuing fight, let's see what people have to say. I think the only thing I'm really curious about, says Malin, is how he came to power in the vacuum left by the Emperor and Vader's demise. Yeah, there's a lot of history about Snoke that I would like to know, because he could be an interesting character, but as it stands, we just don't know. We just don't know. My brother and I, we were talking after the film, because we went to see it together, and we're both, lifelong Star Wars fans, and this is sort of a tradition for us to see these films together. And we were joking about, now we need the Snoke's younger years movie. It's got to be about Snoke when he was like a frat bro, Snoke is his last name, obviously. His first name would be Chad. So it's going to be all about Chad Snoke's frat days. It's going to be about how he got his disfiguring facial scar, doing some kind of hazing. I don't know. Yeah, it was stupid. We were just joking about it. But like, I would like to know about Snoke's history, his younger years, for sure. But yes, relaxation station. That fight afterwards was legit. Malin said she'd watch a Chad Snoke movie. It's the stupidest, like, whatever. It's super dumb. Ryan Reynolds is Snoke. Chad Snoke. Yes. I would 1000% watch that. Message retracted. Why, Caleb? It's too late. It's too late. Ryan Reynolds has to play Chad Snoke. It's got to be like maybe a road trip movie or something like that. Okay, so yeah, so the fight afterwards was really cool. Obviously, like, again, another recurring theme of this movie is how self-aware this film is, and like, as soon as that goes down, okay, it's boss fight time, or it's, we're gonna fight against these Praetorian guards, these crimson clad badasses, and they all have their different weapons, and they do their awesome, like, wow, I'm gonna do my fighting stance before I now charge at you. And we have these cool moments between Kylo and Rey, like the way the last guard was defeated, where what was it, Rey basically force throws her saber to Kylo, who grabs it and ignites it, and then the blade goes back into the guy's eye socket. It was a pretty brutal fight. There was a decapitation at one point, but yeah, that was awesome. I love the symbolism of the the crimson cloth, those fabric hangings that are covering the windows. They get lit on fire, and so there's all this flame in the background, and literally Snoke's inner sanctum is going up in flames. His whole plan, everything, his world is going up in flames around him. I mean, he's already dead at that point, but yeah, so I thought that scene was pretty badass. And then the part where Rey and Kylo have their showdown, and you can tell that Rey is so disappointed with Kylo. Like, don't do this, Kylo. No, she's just so, like, desperately sad at that point. Yes, the eye socket death was super sick. And Kylo, like I said, is desperate in his own way. He's desperate to have Rey with him, to have someone at his side. He likes her. He cares about her. It's obvious. And he has that great please moment, like, please join me. Anyway, that whole thing was good. And then the lightsaber getting ripped apart, Luke's saber getting ripped apart, was odd, but fine. I didn't have an issue with that. I like it afterwards when Kylo wakes up and Hux is there. He's reaching for his blaster, and then he sees Kylo waking up, and he's like, oh, no, 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 no. I thought that was a pretty good moment. All right, let's go back to the chat here for a second. Stoked to be Snoked. Yeah, that would be the name of the film, right? Let's talk about Leia after this. I've got Leia coming up, actually. This is going to be a much longer stream than I'd anticipated, apparently, because I've only got like a third of the way through my list of things to talk about here. Can we talk about Warcraft? No. No, we're not going to talk about Warcraft tonight, or ever, probably. Sorry. Yeah, the fight scene was well choreographed, absolutely. And you could say, oh, I don't know, Rey really busts out the moves there when she really doesn't have that much lightsaber training, and it's true, she doesn't. But I was okay letting it slide because it was just so awesome to watch, mostly. And she did struggle a bit, so that was fine, I think. Best scene ever was when the Captain Lady light speeded into the Imperial cruiser. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, they did show a lot of life about the island where Luke was. We might as well talk about that now, because that's kind of just a random, like, grab bag thing. that doesn't necessarily tie into any of the themes that I have for discussion here, but the island where Luke's at, they did give it a lot more detail than they did in the previous movie, because it was only on screen for like a couple minutes previously. I liked the scene where Luke goes and milks the weird walrus creature. I thought that was so good. It was so unnecessary, but I really liked it because I liked the concept of of like crazy old hermit Luke. Like, this is him going back to his, like, I'm a farmer, or like, I'm a hermit, I'm just like a country bumpkin, and he's just living off the land because it makes sense. We find out he's not using the Force. He's closed himself off to the Force out of shame, out of guilt, right, out of fear. And so he's just living off the land. And so we get to see these weird scenes where Luke's just like, gonna go milk this walrus thing, just, you know, pull on his titties a little bit, and then he flashes that like grimace at Rey, and I love that. I thought it was so good. And he goes and he like spearfishes. Like, I thought that was all. I just really liked it. Yes, rest in peace, Admiral Ackbar. Absolutely. Northern Whisper wants to know if they can light speed into ships. Why didn't they do it much earlier? That is a great question. The same question crossed my mind. In fact, my question was, why don't they have hyperspace warheads? Because one of those suckers would just destroy a fleet, right? So that's a big plot hole, but whatever. Who cares? Chewie eating the porgs, yes. So that was another moment of just random characterization on Luke's island there, and that was so like heartbreaking but hilarious at the same time. This looked like Chewie's just about to bite into this roasted porg, and all the other porgs are sitting there with like the saddest faces, and then they all run off except for the one who's like the huge sad eyes, like, oh my god, like maybe that was his like sibling or mother or something that Chewie's about to eat. And all I could think was that there's kids watching this right now, and the kids are like, oh, the porgs are so cute, and this porg is so sad. And it's not like Chewie can go back and uncook the porg he's about to eat, so like the emotional trauma has happened. The porg is roasted, and and it's just a super sad porg. And that scene was just, I think this movie did that kind of thing so well. It really leaned into some outrageous humor, and I thought that almost all of it really landed. Like, it hit, and I loved that stuff. Whether it was Luke milking the weird titty beast, or whether it was the porgs, or okay, the best freaking moment, maybe one of my favorite moments in the entire film, and maybe this is just me because I have a weird sense of humor, but the iron, the Imperial iron descending, you think, oh, it's a spaceship, you know, and you're like, I was willing to give it a pass because I'm like, you know, whatever, Star Wars has some weird spaceship designs. That looks a hell of a lot like an iron, but okay, I guess. And then it was an iron. And it's great because not only is it a joke about goofy Star Wars spaceship designs, it's also a joke about Imperials and their need for like perfectly starched and ironed uniforms. And like, I've thought in past, like, they must have like this army of people that are pressing and starching their uniforms, and they do. It's an army of robots that keeps their uniforms nice. I thought that was hilarious. Like, honestly, one of the funniest things I've seen in probably years, and that's probably just because I'm a big nerd with a weird sense of humor, but it was so good. And it felt like it was something right out of Spaceballs. It felt like a nod to Spaceballs is what it felt like. All right, so what's going on in here? Yeah, I think we'll get more about Snoke. I think we will find out more about him. Unless the movie's that ruthless, unless they're really just like, this series isn't about the past, we're just gonna move ahead. Yes, when Chewie breaks down Luke's door, that was pretty good. I tap that. You like the nuns that are so pissed. I really want to see the nuns pissed after Luke destroyed that guy after he caught a boy in Rey's room. Oh yeah, he destroys the whole hut. Luke's just like, stop. Yeah, those nuns on Luke's island, that was weird, huh? I thought that was a little odd. I didn't mind the idea of caretakers for the island, but I thought it was a very strange thing that they just kind of came out of left field, and we hadn't seen any sign of them up to that point. I did think it was pretty funny how PO'd they were getting at Rey. Thought that was pretty good. Evergreen, hello, welcome. It's great to have you out. I'm sorry, we are deep in spoiler territory here. I'm sorry if we're ruining anything for you, but you should probably leave. It's great having you here, but I don't want anything ruined for you. Dustin Powell says, talk about the Luke hologram scene. I assume you're referring to the part where Luke goes on the Falcon and he meets up with R2. And R2 shows him the Leia hologram that started it all back in A New Hope. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. And the best thing about that scene, it's moving, but the best thing is that Luke lights up when he's talking to R2, and he acts it so well. Suddenly his voice is up an octave, and he sounds just like young Luke in that scene. And he acts like boyish Luke in that scene, and you can see, like, right there, suddenly it all clicked for me. I'm like, oh my god, it's Luke Skywalker. Like, I knew it was. It's Mark Hamill, he's Luke, but old man Luke is a different beast than a younger Luke. But in that scene, young Luke came through so strong, and it was honestly, like, kind of heartbreaking that was the only scene in the movie where he comes through like that. But I really like that scene. The Luke brush off scene seems super out of character. You mean after he gets, after his force projection gets bombarded by all the AT-AT things, and he just, a little out of character maybe, but you remember, he is, at his heart, he is a moisture farmer from Tatooine, and he has always had a little bit of attitude, at least in the previous films. And I think that was consistent with his character. I also think it was consistent with him wanting to just kind of mess with Kylo a little bit. I didn't have a problem with it. Oh, Dustin was talking about the scene on the Salt Flats with Luke's force projection. We will definitely get there, but I thought you meant the hologram scene with R2. Yeah, it's true. He loves R2. He merely tolerated C-3PO. And the reuniting with Chewie it was almost underwhelming in a way. You're right. I think it does stem from the fact that Han was gone. And I thought it was so interesting because at the moment he's like, where's Han? And I was like, he would know Han died. Like, he would have felt it in the Force. But that's explained later when he says he's shut himself off from the Force, right? So he didn't know. So that was a sad moment. Yeah, what do I think the Leia send-off will be? Honestly, I have no idea. That's another perfect example of how this movie completely subverted my expectations. I was going in 100% sure that Leia was going to die in this film, and then she didn't. It was the bait and switch. She flies out into space. You think she's dead, but she isn't. And then she's there for the rest of the movie, and she never dies. So, I don't know. I'd tap that as true that Luke's force projection did not leave footprints. He also was his younger self. Like, he looked as he did in the flashbacks with Kylo at the Jedi Academy, with the brown hair, obviously, and the younger look. Okay, and oh yeah, Northern. That's thanks for coming out. I appreciate your input into the discussion so far. If you want to hear more about my thoughts on it, you can come back and check out the VOD. But thanks for hanging out, and if you want to chat about it at some point, just hit me up on Discord, because clearly you've got some thoughts about this film. So it's good stuff. Thanks for coming by. Okay. And then, of course, Luke, as the Force projection, is also using his lightsaber, which we just saw destroyed. So there were a lot of tells there. But okay, I'm going to try and keep it on. Oh, and y'all, once again, Northern Whisper, thanks for being here as a chat moderator. I don't know if he did anything as chat daddy tonight, but I appreciate it that he still takes that mantle upon himself. Y'all should go check out his channel. He's got some really cool content. If you don't know what he does, go take a look. Okay. Yes, brutalizing G, brutalizing, if you will. Luke dies, Kylo Ren kills Snoke, Yoda makes cameo, Rey's parents are just normal people. It's true. There's all the spoilers for you. Not all of them. Here's a spoiler. Leia doesn't die. That's a weird spoiler, but... Yes, okay. Gosh, I've got so many, like, my entire, like, plans for where this is going to go, this chat, are just falling apart because I'm just talking to you guys, and that's fine. That's good. I wanted to keep this casual, so... Malin says she feels cheated out of her emotional moment when she thought that Leia was dead. Yeah, because the bridge gets blown up and Leia gets sucked out into space. And then the whole just kidding, she's fine thing ruined that impact. I completely agree. I think, upon reflection, that scene was my least favorite of the whole movie because it really is a bait and switch, and it's exclusively to toy with your emotions because there's no reason that scene has to be in the film. It serves no purpose to the plot. The only thing I can think of is that before Leia leaves the series, they wanted her, yes, Mouse Cop, we are discussing this right now. They wanted her to have her Force moment, her moment where she does her cool thing, and she shows her Force sensitivity. And so obviously this scene was that. She flies out into space, she somehow is fine, she pulls herself back to the ship. But I agree, it was cheap. It was a low blow from the point of emotional manipulation because everyone thought that she was going to die in this film, and everyone assumed that was the moment. So it really did cheapen the impact of that moment. And I also think that, the weirdness of it aside, yeah, I just think it was unnecessary. It was totally unnecessary. Also, I'm no expert about what happens to people in space, and yeah, she was kind of frozen looking, but she opens her eyes at one point, and I'm pretty sure that your mucous membranes and stuff boil away in the vacuum of space. And so I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can just open your eyes in space. And you can say okay, it was the Force or whatever. The whole movie is space fantasy, and it's true. There are a lot of things that we just let happen. In Star Wars, we give it a free pass for a lot because it is first and foremost fantasy. It's not hard science fiction by any stretch, but the Leia in space scene was straining credibility, straining believability, and it was completely unnecessary and honestly just kind of emotionally manipulative. So I think that was the weak point of the film, really. What are you guys saying about it? I thought it was great to have the henchman kill Leia after Kylo hesitated and changed his mind. Yeah, I thought that was good. It was almost like Kylo knew it was an inevitability. So he stayed his hand because he didn't want Leia's blood on her or on his hands, but he knew it was going to happen anyway. That's kind of how I saw that. So he could sort of live with himself better that way. Petro, I agree that the Leia in memoriam, in memory, loving memory of Carrie Fisher at the end was probably the appropriate way to handle it. And I hope they I guess they're going to have to explain away her passing in between films. That's my only assumption. A forced moment, oil ocean. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Evergreen says, I had a hunch they wouldn't kill Leia when they appeared to be telegraphing it super hard in the trailer. It would have been too obvious. So my thinking was that they did telegraph it really hard in the trailer. They played that up. They wanted to set that expectation. I figured it wouldn't happen there. But I did think it would happen still at some point in the movie. I expected her to confront Kylo again, or like Han did. And I think maybe that was what a lot of people expected. But it seems that Disney really didn't want to have a son kill a mother, I guess. Or that's not where they wanted to take Kylo's character. And maybe they thought it would be vulgar or crass in a way to have Carrie Fisher die on screen. Maybe they thought it would be disrespectful somehow. I could see that perspective. I don't know how they're going to handle it now, but I can understand that perspective. Andrew says, I felt more caught off guard by the misdirection. They threw me off, and it really makes me wonder how they really will send her off. Yeah, exactly. Small detail, but did the bomber's bombs just fall into the dreadnought like there was gravity, or were they rocket propelled? It was so confusing. Please explain. Dustin, you're right. Yeah, they did just fall out as if there was gravity. Yeah, but whatever. Space technology. I just write it off to whatever. Caleb says, I would have felt kind of bummed for Leia to just die in an explosion. Yeah, it would have been a lame way for her to go, but at the same time, like, it would have really been like driving home, like, okay, this is war. People die in war. It wouldn't have been a glorious or heroic send-off, but one thing that this film, another theme, let's come back to the themes here. Another theme that this film really seems to want to push is that heroes don't really matter, which is again at direct odds with Star Wars tropes. What we expect out of Star Wars. Star Wars has always been about the heroes and glorifying the heroes, but there are a number of instances in this film where acts of heroism actually turn out to be the wrong thing, and it turns out that heroes are just as susceptible to failure as anybody. Luke's failure with Kylo, Rey meeting Luke and being disappointed by what he is, because even though he was a hero, he is a coward at the beginning of this film. He's running from his past. Obviously, the whole thing with Poe's failure, his attempted coup, and trying to be the hero, his need to be the hero, and his need to be in power and in control. Even though he has the right, he has good intentions at heart, the way he goes about it is the way that a hero would in a film, but that's not what it's about, and he fails as a result. And so there are a number of instances where we realize it's about values more than heroes. Another good example is when Rose and Finn first meet, and Rose is like all fangirling over Finn, like, oh my god, you're a hero of the Resistance. But then she realizes what he's doing, and she's like, in that moment, the pedestal that he was lifted up on comes crashing down, and she tasers him or whatever, And so multiple times this movie shows that heroes are not all they're cracked up to be, and that you should never put people on pedestals, because everyone has their flaws, and it doesn't take a hero to do something great, which ties into another theme of this film, which is that power of the nobody. Rey's parentage, she was a nobody. The orphans on the casino planet, they're nobodies, but it's hinted heavily at the end that that's the future, of the galaxy. Okay, back to the chat here. Thoughts on the casino scene? Yeah, I'll talk about that in just a moment. I know I keep saying I will, but I actually will. Malin says, I hope the next movie is a few years in the future. It'll be 2 years, I think. And it's just referenced and she's gone. Oh, I see. You mean the story is that, yeah. And someone says, I wish General Organa were here. Yeah, something like that. Maybe so. Maybe that's how they handle it. Rey's dueling skills improved reality spoons. Yeah, they did. And I talked about that a little bit. I was willing to let that slide. But it did stand out to me during that scene against the Praetorian Guards, where suddenly she's just kicking all kinds of ass. Cynically Apex, hello. Yes, the love triangle between Finn and Rose and Rey. I don't have a lot to say about that because I have no idea where that's going. I think it's interesting that they set it up. It is a Star Wars tradition. There was a love triangle between Luke and Han and Leia for 2 films, at least. 2 and, well, most of 3 films, actually. So that is a Star Wars trope that this movie has carried forward, as opposed to destroyed like many other Star Wars tropes. Yeah, the Dreadnought itself might have its own gravitational field because it's so huge. That's actually a really good point, Petro. Out of curiosity, with Leia's implied death, does Kylo Ren know? Yeah, I think he knows that she was in danger at that point. Yes. I tap that. Failure isn't an end. Failure is the best teacher. Yeah. So that, let's work with that. That is another huge theme in this film. So we've talked about what? We've talked about letting go of the past as a major theme. We've talked about the power of the nobody. We've talked about the concept of ideals over heroes. We've talked about the subversion of Star Wars tropes, which is sort of a meta theme of this film. But growing from failure. Growing from failure is absolutely a key theme in this movie. Everybody fails in this film. Think about it. This is a film defined by failure. Almost nobody succeeds at anything in this film. Rey fails to get Luke to leave his island, although he does ultimately intervene for the better. For most of the movie, Luke fails to move past his guilt and his failures. Leia fails in a way to protect the Resistance because a lot of them die. Poe fails with his little coup. Finn and Rose fail to find the code cracker they're looking for. They find something much worse and more sinister. They find betrayal, essentially. Kylo fails to turn Rey. Snoke fails to turn Rey. Like, this is a movie defined by failure. Good night, Dustin Powell. Thanks for coming out. Phasma fails to kill Finn. Like, it's largely a movie of failures. But in all that failure, there are deep and important lessons, and this is something that allows these characters to grow and become more complex and to be believable as characters. I think that the theme of growing from failure is one of the greatest strengths of this film. We see it happening with Luke. Ultimately, he overcomes his failures to confront his past, and he ultimately does confront Kylo via Force vision, and in the process, he sacrifices himself. Poe definitely, I think, learns from his failure, and he moves forward with the understanding that he doesn't have to be the hero necessarily. What else we got going on here? Obviously, Snoke doesn't have an opportunity to learn from his failure. Kylo is still failing, still learning, still failing, still learning. But really, this theme of growing from failure is totally key to this film. What do we got going on in chat, guys? Okay, Poe is the new Han Solo. Yeah, I mean, he's everyone's space boyfriend, right? He's like the one. He's the roguish, attractive one. Savo Strength just joined in, but definitely feel like this movie will grow on me as you watch it more. Yeah, that is exactly what I said. I think at the beginning of this stream, I said that this is the kind of film where that for me anyway, I walked out thinking, I don't know how to feel about this. The initial impression wasn't like exhilarating or jubilant or anything like that. The initial impression was like, well, that was kind of a weird thing. That was very different. But now, having had a chance to chat with a couple of close friends and chat with you guys, the more I talk, the more I think, the more layers I'm discovering and peeling back, the more I'm appreciating this film. I think it will absolutely grow better with time. Whereas The Force Awakens was very much the opposite for me. You know, it's all up front. You're like, yeah, Star Wars, woo. But then you think about it more and you realize, well, that was kind of shallow, and that was very derivative, and that was really not doing anything new or interesting or exciting. This is exactly the opposite, like the polar opposite of The Force Awakens in that sense. How do I feel about Rose and the other newly introduced characters? Asks Mouse Cop. I like Rose. I think she's a good character. I think she was well acted as well. Crotch Bra. I thought Rose was kind of unnecessary. Yeah, I mean, does she need to be there? I don't know, but I like her. I don't have a problem with her. Parker Clemens, you liked it. Very cool. Phasma versus Finn. I thought it was kind of lame. That was one of the other scenes that I mean, I thought it was lame at the time, but actually in retrospect, again, the self-awareness of this film kind of makes me okay with it, because it's like, okay, here's that showdown. You know this showdown had to happen. Phasma needs to have her moment. Finn needs to have his moment. Someone's got to win. Obviously, it's going to be Finn. I thought it was lame that Phasma's just, that's that, you know. We assume she's dead. She did fall into a disintegrating ship that was exploding. Literally fell into a fireball. And in as like a classic showdown moment, I thought it was fine, but I kind of wish that the Phasma character had more going on. Oh yeah, Evergreen, you're probably gone now, but yeah, you really should get out of here. You've probably had like half the movie spoiled by now. Dustin Powell, I thought you were going to bed. I thought you were leaving. Or maybe you were saying goodbye to somebody. Maybe, I don't know. The evolution of the Force, asks Austin. Yeah, I like the evolution of the approach to the Force. You know, one of the great themes of Star Wars has been the, you know, the climactic battles of good versus evil, basically, the light versus the dark, and this trilogy is taking that in a very different direction while maintaining that concept of light versus dark duality, but it's certainly dancing much closer to the idea of a gray, of a balance in the Force. Malin, Poe can be your space boyfriend any day. He can be all our space boyfriends, let's be honest. Cypher says they appreciate that it's very different, but don't think all the changes necessarily made sense. Maybe so. Yeah, it was very different. But the series I think it needed a change. You can't make the same movie. Well, you can make the same movie again and again. And you could make a lot of money doing it. Disney could make a heck of a lot of money doing it. I think personally this was a very bold movie on Disney's part. I think it was a very brazen move for a couple of reasons. But I think it was a risky film for them to make. But I think for the future of the series, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. Yeah, The Force Awakens did accomplish its purpose. I don't doubt that this is obviously part of their master plan for how this series is going, and I think that The Force Awakens did exactly what it set out to do. And I'm not slagging on The Force Awakens too much. Like I do like that film, and I think it did some stuff. It was Star Wars. It was very Star Warsy. But it was definitely a film where the more I thought about it, the more disappointed in it I became. Whereas this is very much the opposite. The final scene using the boy, asks Joey Abeta. The final scene of the boy using the Force felt out of place. It was an odd epilogue, but it was clearly there to drive home a point, and that was the point of that theme, that the power of the nobody that I was getting at earlier, the idea that heroes aren't the end-all be-all. even though in Star Wars, traditionally they have been. That's no longer the case. We're moving into a new paradigm for the series where it's not necessarily about your past, your heritage, your heroic deeds. It's about anybody, a nobody, rising to the challenge. And I think that's exactly what that final scene was trying to drive home. What have we got going on here? AKN 295. Yeah, you didn't like Snoke dying. Yeah, we talked about that a bit earlier. I don't like necessarily the way he died. I think it was a bit of a cheap way for it to happen, but I think the fact that he did die is actually very interesting. At the moment, I thought it was lame, but I think for the story, it's actually a really good thing. As someone pointed out earlier in the chat, Northern Whispers, I think it was, this allows the next movie to be very interesting indeed. This movie is all about looking ahead. Cypher says, I don't know, the idea that there's always one dark and always one light seems less gray. Yeah, because they're sort of opposing right now, but I think ultimately there will be some kind of balance achieved, where they meet somewhere in the middle. The themes of the grayness of the Force, if you will, are apparent in Luke's discussion with Rey of what the Force is. You know, where Rey says, oh, it's about Jedi and their powers and lifting rocks or whatever, and Luke says the line which he says twice in the film, which is like, the funny thing is every single word of what you just said was absolutely wrong. I like that. I like how he uses that against Kylo later. But he has this discussion with Rey, and Rey's describing what she feels when she reaches out with her feelings, and she feels this cyclicity of the Force, the death and the renewal and the light and the dark and the balance, and the Force is everything in between that binds it all together. And it's this very holistic view of the Force as a balanced element, and that's sort of it's not unique to this film, because, you know, they talk about the Force binding and permeating everything in previous films, but it's a much more full view of the Force, you know, and I think that's where the series is going, you know. Then again, I thought a lot of things about this film before it came out, and I was totally wrong about it. So yes, Jacob, yeah, Rey had those original texts on the Falcon at the end. It will be interesting to see what she does with those. Mouse Cop says that this film was a major game changer for the future of the series. It could have been a filler episode, right? But it wasn't. It was a fundamental pivot in what Star Wars is. Relative Sound, hello. I really appreciate that. Thank you. You've been watching since the Pokemon battery replacement video, Pokemon Yellow. Thank you. Yeah. Joey, you thought Luke was going to fly off the planet in his sunken X-Wing. Yeah, so there's another example of this movie subverting expectations. It's the bait and switch. You see the X-Wing there, and you see, you say, oh, that's why they showed that X-Wing, because obviously Luke's going to use it. I expected it was going to be mirroring Empire Strikes Back, and that Luke would have Rey lift the X-Wing out of the water, because that would be the homage, right? But that's not how this movie rolls. That's not how this movie rolls at all. So that did not happen. The light speed scene was cinematic art, says I tap that. It was beautiful. It obviously, the director Rian Johnson wanted to make a statement with that scene, and he did. It was beautiful. Yeah, that was really well done. Yeah, a lot of people, and great use of lack of sound happened a few times in this movie, where the sound cuts down to basically zero to highlight what's happening on screen. That being the most striking one for sure, but that was well done. Did anyone else dislike Admiral Holda? No, I liked her character. I'll get to that in a second. Star Wars standalone trilogy set in the older public? Hell yeah, give it to me. I want it. I would absolutely eat that up. Z Riches? Yeah, I definitely play Minecraft. Thank you for the invitation, but not open for any collabs at the moment. But I do play Minecraft on the channel for sure. Do I think Leia's going to die in the next episode? No, I think she's going to pass between episodes. I think that's the most respectful way to deal with it. Chicken Legs Productions, welcome. I'm glad to see you've brought the party with you. Why are there no chicken nuggets in Star Wars? I don't think there are chickens in Star Wars, so that's probably why. Maz Kanata, did she drop some sexual innuendos? I don't remember. I want Holda to threaten Poe with the T-Rex. What? I don't even know. I don't even know what that means. So, okay. I think I've more or less addressed the chat here and caught up for the moment. So we've talked about a few themes here. We've talked about letting go of the past. We've talked about growing from failure. We've talked about renewal and sort of that's really the process by which one lets go of the past, passes through sort of this renewal, and you grow from your failures. We've talked about subversion of Star Wars tropes and ideals over heroes. Let's talk about there's a very strong anti-capitalist sentiment in this film. I don't know if you noticed, but oh shoot, of course, that's the T-Rex. Yes. Admiral Holda, Vice Admiral Holda, is I can't remember her name in the first Jurassic Park film. The lady in the first Jurassic Park film. The actress is the same. I understand your T-Rex comment. Thank you for making that connection. I'd tap that. It took me a moment. Yes, Admiral Ackbar also passed when the bridge got hit. It was a trap. He did pass away. He did die there. Which is obviously very sad, and he did not get his moment really to shine, but I think they realize they have bigger fish to fry, and that in the grand scheme of things, Admiral Ackbar is a pretty minor character. So, AKN 295, what did we think of the scene with Leia in space? Yeah, we talked about that. I thought it was garbage, and I thought it was unnecessary. I thought it was a cheap way to try and get an emotional impact out of people, and then like, oh no, wait, she's actually okay, or an emotional response out of people. It was my least favorite scene in the film. I thought it was absurd as well. I did not like it. Laura Dern, yes, thank you, Aaron. That's right, that's the actress who plays Admiral Holda. All right. Z Riches, no one's going to sub to you if you're going around asking people to sub. That's really not the way to do it. The way to do it is hard work and consistency and producing good content. And maybe you do, but going around begging for it in people's chats is not going to win you any fans. I don't mean to be harsh. It's just the truth of it. So if you could please stop advertising in the chat, that would be great. All right. Oh, the voice of Akbar died recently. Maybe that's why they did it, says Andrew. That's good to know. Right, I think I remember reading that. You wish Akbar had been the one to ram the supremacy with the light speed. Yeah, it would have been more emotional, but okay, let's talk a couple other things here. Since this is getting quite long indeed, I'm probably going to try and keep this stream to about 2 hours, so because I've got other things to do for you guys. I've got more, I've got Skyrim to work on. Got a Saturnalia Skyrim to work on. All right. Sorry, Z Riches, but I really had to lay down the law. You're welcome to stick around, participate in the chat about Star Wars. But let's take a moment here to look at this thing. I mentioned at the beginning of chat, I was at a special fan event for the Star Wars premiere. It was like the first showing in my my town, my city. So they gave out these there. So let's open it up and see what's inside, because I'm not quite sure what we're going to find. Malin, you're torn between Star Wars and Skyrim. You don't need to be torn. They're both happening. Star Wars right now. Skyrim will come. Okay, let's do this. Okay, so I've got, looks like 4 big trading cards here, or maybe it's 3. This one's just a cover. It just says Star Wars LAST JEDI. On the back it says, want more cards? Get the full set of 8 exclusive collectible cards for free. Just sign in or join Disney Movie Rewards, blah 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 blah. There's some kind of code on here. Meh. Don't think I'll bother, but okay, so I hope you can get Dumbledore. Yes, I must get the Dumbledore card. Okay, so oh, Andrew, I have not set up my PO box yet. Thank you for reminding me. I talked about that like several months ago. I said I was going to do it, and then I completely forgot. I keep remembering and then forgetting, but thank you. I must do that. I must do that. Okay, so we have this thingy, which is Kylo's First Order fighter, I guess. It doesn't actually say what it is on it, but that's what it looks like. Bullet point, you're getting ready to, or by watching The Force Awakens right now. Good call, good call. On the back of this card, we have, sorry for the overexposure here. These colors are jacked out. We've got one of the nuns, one of the Jedi nuns from Luke's island. Maybe if I bring it back a bit. There we go. Looks a little less insane. We've got BB-8's evil twin in the scene where Rose and Finn and BB-8 and Benicio del Toro's character are infiltrating the Imperial command ship. It's this robot that ultimately gives them away, I think. The evil twin of BB-8. And then here we've got BB-8 on the other side, looking rather cheerful. And then the last card we've got, oh, hello dear, my girlfriend's waving at me from the door. How's it going? She's just checking in. We've got Luke's lightsaber, and then on the back, Kylo's lightsaber. Jacob Amick says it is the TIE silencer. That was the TIE fighter. Tappy tappy tap. Okay. AKN295 says, I've seen this coming up a lot, so I'd like to get your thoughts. I've seen people compare this to episode 5, and that people are split regarding their opinions on it. Some hate it, some love it. Yeah, it's going to be a very polarizing film. It's going to be polarizing because it's making changes. It's making major changes to what Star Wars is. And of course, that's going to alienate some fans. Some people are going to be upset about that. I, for one, think that these changes are mostly welcome. And I'm glad that they're happening. I think it's time for the series to evolve a little bit. So I'm happy with it. But I can understand why it's polarizing. T-Walk MG, thank you for doing what you do. One of the best. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We are discussing the movie right now. This will be the video. So this, instead of making a standalone video, I'm just doing this as an interactive chat with you guys, a live stream, and then I will be posting this to the channel as a VOD, so that anyone else who sees the movie after the fact, you know, after tonight, can come back and watch this discussion. Joseph Gouveia, you just got back, literally got back from seeing The Last Jedi. I think that's the case for a lot of people here in the chat tonight, and this is the best time to be talking about it. So Tony Cruz asks if watching any Star Wars movie is worth it. Yes, absolutely. They're some of the most iconic films of our time. They are classics in a very literal sense. They borrow from classical mythology in a lot of ways to create these stories that are familiar but set in this fantastical universe that really captures the imagination. Although this film that we're discussing here today actually takes things in quite a different, more modern direction. But overall, Star Wars is, you have to watch it. You must. It's a cultural touchstone, really. Okay, Benicio del Toro's character, sure. We can talk about that. I tap that says hiding BB-8 in a trash can was a subtle nod to other trash can-like droids, like perhaps the Gonk droid. It literally looks like a trash can. I didn't think about that, but you're totally right. You might be you're completely correct on that, actually. It's sort of a nod. That's a good point. Okay, let's talk about the casino scene and all that stuff, and Benicio del Toro's character and all that. So the casino scene is going to be one of the more divisive scenes in the film, because I think a lot of people are going to think that it was pretty unnecessary. And I sort of agree. They really could have cut the whole thing out. Personally, though, and maybe this is just me, I thought it was a little silly to start with. And it's very obvious that they wanted to have their cantina scene, you know, they want the crazy aliens and the weirdness, you know, they just wanted a chance to be really Star Wars. In the last film, The Force Awakens, this was Maz Kanata's scene and her place, but they needed to somehow shoehorn that in here. I would argue that the scene was kind of important for breaking up the monotony of the film to that point, because really there were a lot of spaceship corridors on and on and on, spaceships, or cockpits or whatever, you know. And I think that the casino scene was just a chance to sort of be fun, you know. It was something different, so from that perspective I liked it. And once the chase started in the casino scene, I kind of got into it. It was just having fun, you know, in sort of a stupid prequel way, you know. It had a bit of that prequel feel to it, but I didn't mind it. I thought it just added so much needed texture to the film, because I think otherwise it would have been like one big wad of very slow space chase, you know. Granted, flipping back and forth to Luke's island occasionally, but I thought the film needed some Star Wars weirdness, classic Star Wars weirdness, and I think the the casino scene provided exactly that. And it also served to allow Finn and Rose to bond, because clearly that's an important part of the film, and Rose saving Finn at the end, and then we have this awkward love triangle between Rose and Finn and Rey. And then it also introduced Benicio del Toro's character, who was a weird one in that he seemed much more significant than he ended up being. I mean, he ended up betraying them. He was a major asshole, and he sort of caused problems for the heroes, but more than anything, I think he was a way of conveying one of the other major themes of this film, which is this strange anti-capitalist sentiment. And I say it's strange because think about who's producing this film. It's Disney. You know, they're one of the biggest mega companies in the world. They just dropped $52 billion, or 54, to buy 20th Century Fox. Like, they are exactly what this movie is railing against. Now, to be fair, the thrust of the ire in this film is against weapons dealers, and that's brought up several times. You know, people selling weapons on both sides of the war are the bad guys. You know, but I still think it's pretty ballsy of Disney to, on one hand, be this massive company that is, you know, it's a capitalist entity, and then on the other hand, to be producing this film that has such strong anti-capitalist sentiments. It's weird, and as I was sitting there, I was appreciating Disney's audacity for doing this, not because I think that they're like good people or anything like that, you know, with the, you know, betterment of the world in mind or anything. I think it's just because they're trying to put forward a certain image. They're trying to you know, they want people to think, oh, that Disney, maybe they're not so bad, look at that, they're progressive and forward thinking and for the people, you know, which obviously they are not. But I had to admire Disney's audacity, because at one hand I was like, yeah, I appreciate these sentiments they're putting forward, while at the same time I knew they were playing me for a fool. Like, but wait a second, wait a second, you know. And they got away with it, because I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed the scene, the sequence, and I enjoyed the film. So as for the character of Benicio del Toro, I thought he was a very interestingly characterized guy. I can't remember his name. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name. I thought he was quite captivating while he was on screen as a performance. I would like to know more about him. I suspect we have not seen the last of him. I think we will see him in episode 3. Otherwise, he just... yeah, they put too much effort into characterizing him for him to just be a one-off, you know, and just disappear like that. So I think we will see him back. He's a loose end, as it stands. But I definitely did enjoy his character. Even if his involvement in the plot was fairly minor and kind of strange. And I do fully acknowledge that that scene, or that sequence, the whole sequence, is going to be divisive, but I liked it, just for a change of pace, and to have some of that classic Star Wars weirdness. All right, let's go back to the chat. It seems like the only ones who liked the movie were the critics. No, I disagree. I like the movie. I think, as I've said, I think it gets better the more you think about it. I'm 100% going to go watch it again. Honestly, the second half of the movie, I was a bit distracted because I really, really had to pee. Oh my gosh, I had to pee. But I sat through the whole thing. I couldn't leave. I couldn't miss anything. But towards the end, I was just like, oh my god, finish this. Please, please just end this so that I can go have sweet release. Yeah, Malin saying that a lot of people liked it, and probably will probably like it more the more, you know, you think about it and watch it. Who else? Garrett. I've become the only ASMR person you listen to. Oh, well, there's lots of amazing ones out there, and it's a good idea to have a few favorites, but I'm very flattered that you enjoy what I do so much. I'm glad you like the relaxing reviews. Thank you. I enjoy making them. Austin says, saw it for the second time tonight, and The Last Jedi definitely sits a lot better after the second watch. Yeah, caught off guard the first time. I think many people, I think that's very much the case with this movie. I think it will reward repeat watchings. I think it is a movie that will get better and greater with time. Some people think it's the best Star Wars movie. It is very polarizing. Yes, Liam, we did talk about Snoke. I'm not really going to go into it again here, but you can certainly catch it on the VOD if you watch the archive of this stream later, sort of in the first probably 45 minutes, maybe. C-3PO and R2 have been underutilized, yeah. But again, this movie is all about letting go of the past. So I think we will see even less of them as we move ahead. Chewie might die in the next movie, it's possible. Jacob says, I feel without the casino that the audience may have been a bit overwhelmed with all the huge twists and developments. It also shows a world of rich weapons dealers that benefit from the conflict. Yeah, so I talked about that a little bit. It breaks it up. It adds some levity, but also does progress the plot in some ways. Caleb says he finds himself enjoying the prequels as much as the internet hates them. It's due to growing up with them. Yes, I certainly have nostalgia for the prequels. I objectively know that they're not good movies, really. And even at the time, as a youngster watching them, I knew they weren't great. Like, I could tell something was off about them. But I do have a soft spot still for the prequels, especially Phantom Menace, personally. Because that was at that right time where I was very impressionable, you know? But it's been years since I've watched them. I should go back, though. T-Walk MG loved the film, thought it was great. His buddy makes the point that most of the characters in the story in general is at the same place as they were at the end of the last film. I disagree about the characters. I think the characters have evolved quite a bit in this film. I think that the story itself isn't exactly the same place as it was at the end of the last film. We'll get to that at the very end here, shortly, where I kind of lay out my criticisms. But one of my chief criticisms is that the overarching plot was absolute trash and nothing really happened. It was just there to serve the character development for the most part. It was just, you know, this chase between these two capital ships, which is an absurd premise to start with, was really just there to provide a place for the other stuff to happen in, for these characters to have these conflicts and revelations. And Jacob Amick, you watched the originals on VHS when you first watched them. Me too. I watched them. My granddad had recorded the original trilogy on tapes while it was airing on TV one time. And that was my first Star Wars experience in the early 90s, watching his taped video TV showings of the Star Wars trilogy. Aaron EVX, how do I feel about this film compared to Seven? Yeah, so I talked about this a little bit, maybe half an hour ago or something, maybe 45 minutes ago. But generally speaking, I think it is better than Episode 7 because it takes risks and it changes what we expect out of Star Wars. It subverts our expectations, and it is layered and nuanced and mature in ways that no Star Wars film has been before now. And I think it will endure as a classic much better than Episode 7 did. Episode 7, you watched it, you're like, yeah, Star Wars. And then as you thought about it more, you started realizing that, it was just so similar. It was so derivative, you know? And honestly, it has not aged well in my impression, in my mind. Whereas this movie, I think, will continue to get better. Okay. Yeah, Poe and Rey. Yeah, I was caught off guard by that too, where they introduce each other and then I guess they never did meet face to face. I guess they never did. But Tony Montana, we did talk a little bit about the boy at the end of the movie, yeah. I think that plays into one of the major themes of the film, which is that it doesn't matter what your background is. It's the nobodies of the galaxy that are going to rise up and be the next generation that that makes great changes in the galaxy. And that ties into Rey's parentage, her being a nobody, right? Malin wants to know, what are my ships for all these love triangles? I haven't put a lot of time or thought into it. I think I want Poe and Finn and Rose to get together. I think that's the OTP here, personally. I think Rey has a much different path ahead of her. I don't know who the heck Poe's going to end up with. I don't know. I would have said Admiral Holda. That's Vice Admiral Holda. But then she went and got herself killed. So I thought that would have been a hilarious way for that to end up. So I don't know who Poe ends up with. Jacob Amick, thank you for coming out. Have a good rest. And you're welcome for the stream. AKN295 wants to know what the price of a popcorn and a small soda is. He says $6 for popcorn, $5 for soda. Yeah, it's something like that at my theater as well. Although because I was at this special fan event, we actually got free popcorn. But we did pay a bit more for our ticket. T-Walk MG agrees with my statement that character development was the point of this film. Disney's trying to end the light versus dark, the good versus bad that Star Wars is known for. Yeah, they're trying to make it more complex. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we never got to see Snoke use a lightsaber. We don't even know if Snoke has a lightsaber. Maybe he doesn't have one. The next Disney Star Wars films are going to be more focused and niche. I don't know about niche, but they certainly, as I've said, have an agenda. They have certain themes that they want to push with the series, which are not classic Star Wars themes. So I tap that, says he disagrees, or agrees and disagrees about the plot. Kylo is Emperor. Yeah, that was one of the big changes that happens. Rey is a Jedi. Yes, I guess Luke basically says that she is. But that's, again, it's a character thing, isn't it? Her character developed, but the plot itself didn't really move ahead. Yeah, I don't know. Nothing much changed. Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah, I shouldn't say nothing happened in the plot, but it certainly wasn't. In a way, this film was like the polar opposite of the prequels, actually. If you think about the prequels, they're characterized by pretty interesting, overarching stories of political intrigue, trade conflict, you know, venerable old establishment like the Republic falling to its own interior corruption, and the Jedi being part of that, and these machinations going on behind the scenes. Interesting stuff from that perspective, but the moment to moment of those movies is generally pretty bad. The character development is poor and ham-fisted, and the dialogue is miserable. This is completely the opposite. The overall or overarching plot that's taking place, pretty boring. Not that much happens. It's really just a framework for these amazing character interactions, these cool moments, this really pretty good dialogue to play out on. So Poe and BB-8 equals bromance goals. It's so true, man. They are the OTP. Duel of the Fates like scene with Rey and Kylo. Yeah, we're probably headed towards something like that. At least I would say that we are, but now I really don't know where this franchise is going. The next movie could be anything, and that's what's so cool about this film, really. I think is that this really could go anywhere next, and that is a very liberating thing for a series with as much baggage as Star Wars. Do I think there will be a fourth trilogy? Yeah, absolutely. I know I liked the comedy, Austin. I thought it was well done. I really liked it. I thought it was goofy, but I liked it a lot. There are some who feel that Ren and Rey never developed character-wise in this movie. Kylo Ren continues to be conflicted. His opinions of Rey have certainly developed, but yeah, he's not in a terribly different place than he was, aside from the fact that now he's leading the whole First Order, I guess. I think Rey definitely developed. I think part of her development in this movie was letting go of her obsession with her past and her parents. I think that was holding her back, and I think she recognized that, and I think she grew past that in this film. Do you think Kylo will get a redemption arc? Malin asks. That is such an interesting question. I don't know. I want to say yes, because that would be a very Star Wars thing to do. Redemption is such a key theme of Star Wars up to this point, but they've thrown the rulebook out the window, so I don't know. You love him as a character, but it would have more impact to see him fall to the dark entirely. It kind of would, actually, you know? He becomes consumed by darkness and Rey has to kill him. That'd be a very tragic ending to the story. Not the younglings. There are no younglings for Kylo to brutally murder. Yeah, I think the audience laughed at most of the jokes. I thought the humor mostly hit. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good. I don't know, maybe I'm just a goof, but I thought it was pretty well done. Yeah, Chipmunk, the Phasma, I can't even talk. The Phasma situation was disappointing for sure in this film. They're very 2010s jokes. Yeah, maybe they'll get old quickly. I think the film has a lot of staying power, but maybe the humor doesn't. I don't know. I I think the space iron is always going to be good though. The Imperial iron. It just worked on, well, two levels. It worked on two levels, but I just thought it was a great, like, as I said, like an homage to Spaceballs. It's exactly that kind of goofy humor. Am I worried about Star Wars becoming very similar to Guardians of the Galaxy? I can't speak to that because I shamefully have not seen either of the Guardians of the Galaxy films. So I really couldn't tell you. I don't know. But I think that they're two very different franchises. Do I think the Knights of Ren will show up in the next movie? Good question. I thought at some point they might show up in this one, but as far as we know, they didn't. So yes, Adam Driver's performance was very good. Kylo is such a you feel for him, like you say, highly empathetic, vulnerable, dangerous. He's yeah, he's unpredictable, but he's very human. He's very human, obviously conflicted. And you know, people write him off as, oh, he's emo, you know, whatever, he's just whiny. But I mean, he's got some real shit to work through, and he, as a character, I think he's really interesting because you don't know where he's gonna go. And if they're going with the gray middle ground, maybe he doesn't need a redemption arc. That might be true. You're right, Andrew. Caleb, thanks for coming out. I'm glad you enjoyed the stream. Take it easy. Watch out for Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds is Snoke in Van Snoke later. Yeah, I'm gonna push for that. Bring it on, Chrome Dome. Yeah, I don't know if that. Yeah, that was a dumb line, but whatever. It's not the first dumb line in Star Wars. Not the first stupid one-liner. The iron joke went straight over your head because you realized it was an iron from the start. Oh, fair enough. I for the first moment I thought it was. I mean, I thought it looked like an iron. I thought it was just a ship that looked like an iron. Laposi, key, late night chat. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing here. Oh man, TFE. Thank you. Yeah, Battlefront 2 Wander vids. This is something I've answered in a couple of other live streams, but just as a PSA here, I have not yet found a way in Battlefront 2 to get into a map without other players or AIs that want to shoot at me. In Battlefront 1, you could do custom maps. There were ways that you could get into maps with a, or at least with one other person. And like, for instance, I went into some maps with a friend and they would just hide in the map. And that's how I did the Battlefront 1 map wanders. But there doesn't appear to be such a way to do that in Battlefront 2. So as much as I would love to do some Battlefront 2 map wanders, I can't. I can't right now. So maybe that'll change. Maybe they'll patch something in. But as it stands right now, I will not be doing any because I cannot. Regrettably. Any sort of notable differences from TLJ compared to TFA? Yeah, JJ's back for episode 9. Yeah, well, tons of differences. Yeah, they're very different movies. I believe JJ has it in him to create a more interesting and different movie in episode 9. I think he'll have to, now that the direction has sort of been set by this film. But what that's going to be, I don't know. I am honestly a little disappointed that he's coming back for 9, because he's the safe choice. He's a known quantity. But I'm very excited that they have Rian Johnson working on an entirely new trilogy. That is really cool. And I am probably more excited for that than I am for episode 9. well, maybe not. I want to see what happens with these characters in these arcs, but yeah, yeah, Kylo's redemption would be perhaps finding balance, because he clearly he's so conflicted, he's torn between the light and the dark, these two polar opposites. Maybe he can find some kind of middle ground. Was there I have a bad feeling about this reference in the movie? I don't think there was. I don't think there was that line at all. Okay. I think it's about time we wrapped this, or pretty soon here, guys. I've been talking a lot. We've chatted a bit. So, the one other thing I wanted to point out as a theme in this film, just very briefly, is the theme of strong women, because that clearly is a major part of this trilogy, and I don't want to come across as like condescending or inflammatory or anything here. I'm not trying to be like edgy or anything like that, but it's very obvious that there are themes and relationships and things about women in places of power that were not touched on in any of the previous Star Wars films. The one great moment being the Vice Admiral Holda. It's quite apparent, this is telegraphed in the film. Poe, when Vice Admiral Holda is first introduced, Poe says, "Oh, she's not what I thought she would be," and then they have this sort of battle of wills that culminates in Poe's resistance, his little mutiny, his failed mutiny. But one of the first interactions between Holda and Poe is this awesome moment where it's basically Poe mansplaining the situation to Vice Admiral Holda, who is clearly a very capable leader. And he comes in and he says, "Oh, we've only got so much, fuel left, and this is our situation, and we're gonna get killed." And she's just this very like condescending, really. She's very condescending. She looks at him and says, "Thank you for explaining the situation to me." Like it's just this perfect moment of mansplaining on Poe's part. I appreciated that. And I thought the relationship between Holda and Leia was really neat. They had a couple of moments together, and that's a character interaction that Star Wars has never touched on before. The relationship between two older women, two very capable, powerful women, but older women, and it's this very tender moment between them of friendship that I would never have guessed that Star Wars would entertain such a character interaction. It just doesn't seem like a Star Warsy thing. Star Wars is about the heroes, it's about the heroic people doing heroic things. And I thought that was a really cool, again, a maturation of what Star Wars can be. And as some people are pointing out here in the timing, or in the comments, the timing of this is very apt. This is a very 2017 movie in a lot of ways. What with people, a lot of people discovering that their childhood heroes, a lot of these actors, a lot of these public figures in the media aren't what they thought they were, with all these allegations of sexual misconduct coming out, and also the subsequent empowerment that's occurred for the people who were victims of these deeds and these people. And so in that sense, it's a very timely film, and some of those themes, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's brave of Disney, but it's very topical, I suppose. But it's very cool to see some different kinds of characters and different kinds of power dynamics being explored. And let's be honest, like Poe's entire little mutiny is really about, again, his heart's in the right place, but he does it because he wants to be in control. He thinks he should be the one to be in control, and he doesn't trust Holda. Whether that's because she's a woman, or maybe because he doesn't know her, it's not really explained, but it's heavily implied that he doesn't think that she is capable of leading and that he is the one to do it, right? So I think it's interesting. And I don't have a problem with what they did in that sense. I think that it's interesting to see these new characters and new dynamics being explored, these new topics that I never thought Star Wars would. Well, I shouldn't say that Star Wars would never touch, because let's be honest, Princess Leia has always been a strong character. You know, even when she was objectified on Jabba the Hutt's, chaise lounge as a slave lady, slave Leia, she still got the last laugh. She murdered Jabba the Hutt. She strangled him with her own slave chains, right? So the theme of strong women is not new in Star Wars, but I think this took it further and deals with it in a much more mature way in this film. Okay, what's going on in chat here? One more time, back to the chat. Biggest things I think would have made a better movie. Snoke versus Rey and Kylo. Yeah, it could have been better. Luke actually teaching Rey. He did teach her. He did teach her some things. And finally, the sort of force jump / manipulation. Any force use during a regular shot. There's a bit, there's some, but Laposi Key says, I think the theme of strong women is very well timed considering the media. I saw that and I mentioned that earlier. Although I have mixed feelings about it. I think their inclusion of strong female characters is interesting. Yes. Malin likes seeing the inclusion of strong female characters to a point. It can get a little pushy when they cut to all the pilots and they're all women except for one guy. Yeah, I mean, really what you want is equal representation, right? Like, you want something that's believable. That like, hey, in this society, women and men are equal and they're both fulfilling these roles, so yeah, you could argue that they take perhaps that a little bit far in some cases, but I'm sure I bet you they're very, very careful and considered about who they put where in terms of gender, in terms of racial diversity as well. That was something that seemed pretty apparent to me, is that they were really attempting to have this sort of racial equability amongst their both the main cast and also the extras. Yeah, I think the series handled the challenge well. I think this movie did these things fairly gracefully. I think that it handled these themes with a maturity that I would not expect of Star Wars, and I think that's really cool. Yeah, Leia is iconic, of course. I too strangle my exes with slave chains. Is there something you want to tell us? I don't know if I should be concerned that you're in the chat here. Buzz Lightbeer. Late to the stream, but you like the movie? That's good. That's good. Yeah, I like the movie too. Snoke's guards were badass. Fender Zoran Lerock. You can't watch the stream live? Why not? It's live right now. Oh, you haven't seen the film maybe, though. Hello, yes. Well, if you haven't seen the film, you're going to have to get out. I did say your name, so there you go. You have your acknowledgement. You may now leave, watch the film, and come back and watch the VOD later. 4 and 43. Disappointed by a lot of the parts of the movie that felt pointless. The casino scene, yeah, we did talk about that. But you like Kylo's development, yeah. Goodbye, Fender. I think you should go back and watch what we've talked about here. We're sort of getting close to wrapping up the stream, so I'm not going to reopen a lot of these things because I've already discussed it. But if you're interested in hearing my opinions on this stuff, certainly I encourage you to watch the stream up to this point. It will be available on my channel in another couple of hours' time. So. Yes, Space Leia's scene. We're all in agreement. It's bad when she flies out into space. Snoke's background, the lack of Snoke's background, yeah, it's disappointing, but I think it's very intentional. Like I said, I think that it's about the fact that Snoke, it doesn't really matter, as it turns out. This isn't about Snoke. It's not about any of these old characters. Not that Snoke's an old character, but he's a part of the past, whereas this is all about the future now. What's my guess on the plot and character development in episode 9? I don't know. I cannot really guess. And that is the beauty of this, guys. That is the beauty of this film. It has freed Star Wars in a way that has never been freed before. The possibilities are kind of endless for what could happen in episode 9, and I'm so excited to see what they do with it. I think it's going to be less surprising than this film was. That's my one guess here. But in terms of development and plot and characters, I have no idea. I don't know, but I'm looking forward to finding out. I tap that, you're welcome. I have had a lot of fun chatting about this with you guys. Let me just go through my list very quickly here and see if there's anything else I wanted to touch on before I close this out here. The power of the nobody, letting go of the past, growth from failure, renewal, strong women, anti-capitalist sentiments, ideals over heroes, subversion of Star Wars tropes. We've talked about all of it. We've talked about all of it, really. I've touched on the things I didn't like about this film, but just to really quickly run them down here. I think the plot was terrible. I think the whole idea of two giant capital ships chasing each other through space for 2.5 hours, or 2 hours at least. Who approved that? Like, who thought that was a good thing? Like, I think the whole concept of, like, the big Imperial cruiser not being able to catch up to the light rebel cruiser, but the rebel cruiser can't enter hyperspace. It makes me think of, like, old-timey naval combat with, like, two big battleships at sea, like under sail, you know, like sailing ships, like trying to catch each other just on the wind or something like that. And that's kind of a cool thing, but in practice it's boring as hell. It's just bad. It's very slow and plodding. Also, couldn't the First Order just, I don't know, call in some backup in hyperspace? Couldn't some other battle cruisers just come in and cut off the rebel or the resistance? Or couldn't they send out some long-range fighters to take them down? They tried to kind of hand wave that away, like, oh, it's too far, it's out of range or something, but that was garbage. It was just bad. So yeah, I think that was terrible. But I don't think that really bad plot is enough to make it a bad movie, because I think all the moments that are hung off of it, well, not all the moments, but I think most of the moments and the character interactions and the revelations that are hung off of that incredibly frail skeleton of a plot, if you can even call it that, I think the moments were excellent. I think they really shined. So episode 8, greatest enemy, fuel reserves. Yeah, exactly. So paper thin plot, boring slow spaceship chase. Leia's space scene is dumb, but I think we're all in agreement that was poor. It was manipulative. It didn't need to be there. It didn't advance the plot. It could completely be removed. Snoke's death was polarizing, as I said earlier. I'm glad it happened, but I think it could have been handled a little bit better. The Phasma scene was disappointing. We've talked about that. She just was a bit character again. She fought, she died. That's all there is to it. I would have liked to see more of her development. Here's one. The overuse of Deus Ex Machina. The idea that so many things happen so conveniently at just the right time. This is something Star Wars has always been guilty of, and you could say it's the will of the Force or whatever, but often it's a hallmark of lazy writing or lazy storytelling. And I think in some cases that might have been the case here. I'm willing to give Star Wars a lot of leeway when it comes to that kind of stuff, but even I felt like it was a little bit much in this film. And then just some of the hand waving in this film about, like, like I said, about, you know, this slow space chase and the First Order not being able to call anybody in or anything like that. Or this hyperspace tracking technology that they were talking about, and like, oh, well, if it works like other hyperspace tracking, like only the lead ship will have the tracker or something. But if we just like, what was it, if we destroy it, it'll just go to a different ship. But if we shut it off, then we're good for six minutes, you know, one power cycle. Like this stupid, totally contrived, hand wavy situation that obviously only serves to make this harebrained scheme of flying over to the supremacy and trying to shut it down viable, you know. Like it just felt, if that felt like lazy storytelling too, lazy writing. Those sorts of things. There were a number of moments like that, or the hyperspace, you know, Admiral Holda hyperspacing her ship into the Imperial fleet. As cool as that moment was, as badass as it was, and it was a beautiful moment, it opens up all kinds of questions about like what can you do with hyperspace weapons. Like, yeah, I mentioned it earlier, but like hyperspace warheads, why is no one doing that? You can destroy planets. You don't need a Death Star. You can just like hyperspace stuff into planets. Just stuff like that. And I'm sure there's some kind of in-universe explanation for all of this, because there always is in Star Wars, you know. But yeah, it's just, there's a few elements of lazy hand-wavy storytelling and writing in this movie that really let it down. So that's really my summary of what I didn't like about this film. Those sorts of things. But for all of those little things that it gets wrong, or in some of the bigger things like the plot, I think it does so much right. Like I've said before, it has these wonderful fresh themes that are running through it that are so different from what we've seen in Star Wars before. It has a clear vision for where Star Wars can grow into, how it can mature from here, and it's a very, very liberating film for the series. It really does feel like we have carte blanche to take this series somewhere that has never been before. And I love how rich this film was in allusions and references and symbolism, and the different levels on which it works, and the complexity and depth of its characters. All these things are things that we have never seen in a Star Wars film, to this extent at least. And they really excite me for the future of this franchise. And I think that ultimately this had to happen for the series to grow beyond, you know, where it has been. As much as I love classic Star Wars tropes, I think it's so refreshing and cool to see so many of those tropes being subverted in this film. And the wonderful self-awareness of this film was something that I did not expect, but I really enjoyed. It's clear that the director and the writers and everybody involved knew what they were doing here, what they were presenting, and they know that this is a very different film. Rian Johnson has even come out and said as much. He says none of it's going to be what you expect, and it wasn't. You know, there was so little about this film that played out the way I thought it would, because I went in with my traditional sort of conservative notions of what Star Wars is, as many people no doubt did, and I got them all overturned. And some people are going to find that upsetting. Some people are going to find it difficult because that's not what they want out of Star Wars. But personally, I find it incredibly freeing and exciting. I find it very exciting, and I'm very excited about the future of this franchise, more than I thought I could be, really. And while it is not a perfect movie, for the reasons I mentioned, they didn't knock it out of the park. It's not a 10 out of 10. It was still, I think, a very important movie, a very interesting movie, a movie that's going to reward repeat watchings, and I'm absolutely going to go watch it again. I think it's only going to get better with time. I think ultimately it will go down as one of the best Star Wars movies ever. I think ultimately people will realize that's the case, despite the fact that the initial impression is one of, what did I just watch? Like, there's so much to unpack about this film. It's very hard to digest the first time around. I'm still digesting it, you know. Clearly I'm still thinking about some of these concepts, but overall, really very pleased with this film. I liked it a lot. I really did. So that is really my wrap up for this film. I'm going to go back to the comments here one last time. See what you guys are talking about. The chat here. Really interesting. We're interested in the Resistance's position, since none of the allies they called for came to their aid, says AKN 295. Yeah, it's true. At the end there, they called for aid. No one showed up. But can you blame them? Can you blame them? I mean, the Resistance is nothing at that point. It's a few dozen people. There almost is no resistance left. I mean, the rest of the galaxy probably knows that. They're probably, you know, corralled by fear. Fear of the New Order, just like... you know, they were under the old Imperials. I really hate how they make it seem like it's checkmate, and then they find one potential way out, but then nope, we can just leave escape pods. Yeah, like the transports. Yeah, the use of the cloaking. There's a couple times where they're like, oh, we're just gonna cloak, and we're invisible now, you know. That happens a couple of times in the film, and again, it seems kind of lazy. I agree. How do I feel about the Finn/Rose arc? You think they had very little chemistry? Asks Vanessa Moss. I think they'll get there. I think I was all right with it. I think Rose is a pretty charming character. She's very sweet. I'd like to see more of her character. More than anything, I think more than I liked her character, I liked her actress. I thought that she was very well acted, and I want to see where that character goes. Rey's parents being nobody and how it devalues everything that was set up with the lightsaber and visions in The Force Awakens. I don't think it devalues it. I just think it recontextualizes it. I think, again, it's a theme in this movie that it doesn't matter what your background or past is. And it could be, you know, why not? Why can't she be a nobody? It just happens to be that she's the one that the will of the Force, or whatever, has chosen to be in this place at this time. She happens to be there, you know, and so she receives these visions. I don't know. But it could also be that Kylo was just, you know, just lying to her. We don't know. But I would be okay with her parents being nobodies. I think it's a great subversion of a well-worn Star Wars trope. Malin says the hyperspace jump through a ship that has not been explored before because it's inherently dangerous and has no tactical value when it's fully crewed. Everyone would die. It's true. But you think if they could weaponize it, they would somehow. Again, like warheads, you know, like it's just if it's that powerful, you know. Yeah. Aaron said he feels as though Finn would do better with Rey or even Poe. Yes, Finn and Poe bromance. I could get behind that. People have hinted at that, but would you agree in saying that instead of having Rose and Finn go to the casino, we should have had Finn and Poe go instead to further their bromance? Maybe, yeah, further their relationship. That would have been pretty good. Rose was a funny introduction because she isn't necessary, it's true, but I think she has an interesting role to play yet, and I do like her actress, like I said, so. Superman Gaka says you should shave your hair because you look like Professor Xavier. Yeah, what's his name? James McAvoy? Yeah, do I look like him? I don't know. Maybe a little bit. You guys can all vote. Let me know. My hair is glorious. Thank you. Thank you very much. I work on it. I don't really. I just kind of, I keep it clean and tidy. It's just a proposition. Sure. Hello, our savior Neil. Episode 9, Rise of the Younglings. Yeah, it does look very much like that, doesn't it? It does look very much like that. The chat has died right down. I don't know if you guys are you there? Are people still there? It just kind of stopped. Is Finn a Jedi too, or just Rey? I'm not going to say anything, Riley. Go watch the movie. Who else thought Rose died after kissing Finn? I thought it was a possibility, but I thought it would also be weird that they just killed off the character they just introduced. So I did, however, think that Finn was going to die in that scene. There was a moment where I thought, they're doing this, they're going to kill him, which also in retrospect wouldn't make any sense, but you know, that film was nothing but not if not surprising. So you guys are still there. Good. Lol's still here. It is late. Forgive the silence. It is late. It's late-ish for me, and I have some more recording to do here for you guys for this weekend's video and next weekend's video, and it's even later for people further east of me. So you're gonna stop annoying me because I said I was ending soon. I am ending soon. 7 a.m. in Ireland. It's okay. You should go to bed if you haven't, or it's early, I guess, if you've just woken up. Thank you for waking up and watching the stream. Yes, our savior Neil. I enjoyed the film. And I'm not going to go into why, because I've literally just spent the last 2.5 hours explaining why. And I know you just joined us, but oh yeah, okay, fine. Luke's send-off and the way they treated his character. I didn't talk about that. So he got his moment, clearly. You know, he got his moment where he confronts Kylo. That was awesome. It was great. I love the way they handled his character through there, the way he confronted Kylo and taunted him and, you know, played to his weaknesses, really. Luke dying, I did not expect. I don't think anyone expected that. But he didn't really... Yeah, I know, Malin. How did we not talk about that? Of all the things. We talked about everything except that. I think that the way he passed was perhaps the best way that they could handle that. Luke didn't die. He chose, really. He chose his time to go. And as much as it pains me as, like, Luke is my boy. Luke is the man. When I was a kid, Luke was the guy I looked up to. He's still... Mark Hamill is my #1 man crush, I'm pretty sure. He is... Like, everything about Luke Skywalker is just... I love. And so seeing him disappear, die, become one with the Force, whatever you want to say, was like a really shocking moment because I didn't expect that. And I think that they could have telegraphed it better, like that this was his final sacrifice, that he really was exerting his everything to confront Kylo. But he had his badass moment, which I appreciate. He totally played Kylo for a fool, which is great. And then he leaves on his own terms, and that's the best part of it. No one kills Luke Skywalker. He does not die. He finds his... Yeah, as someone here says in chat. Who was that? Yeah, Malin says he finds his peace, which is what Rey says in the film as well. He is at peace with his guilt. He lets go of the guilt from the past, which again, the theme, letting go of the past. He confronts his guilt. He lets go of it. He does what he needed to do by confronting Kylo, and then he basically promises Kylo that he's going to haunt him forever. So we have not seen the last of Luke Skywalker. You know, I have no doubt that he will be back, and I look very forward to seeing what happens with him in the next film. But he's not going to be a main character, and everyone knew this trilogy is about passing the torch from the get-go. You know, all of our old heroes are going to die or pass or fall into irrelevance or whatever, because this is a transitional trilogy. It has to be. And so I think that was just about the best way that Luke could go. And yeah, it is reminiscent of Obi-Wan's death at Darth Vader's lightsaber, becoming one with the Force by choice. It's a little less violent than Obi-Wan's end. And it's very much more on Luke's terms, you know. But it's very much the same. Like, if you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. He says very much a similar thing to Kylo. And I really look forward to seeing where that goes. So, heartbreaking, yes. Handled perfectly, maybe not quite in its presentation. But again, what ultimately happens, I think, is maybe the best way that Luke could could pass, you know. So okay. Discussion part 2 confirmed. No, I'm actually going to wrap it now. It's got to happen. 1:30 in Chicago. I'm glad that you're enjoying the discussion. Thank you for tuning in. And for all of you who missed parts of the discussion, there's 2.5 hours of this in total. And you can go back to the archive of this, which will be up on my channel in a couple of hours' time. You can watch it at your leisure and see what I thought about various aspects of this film. And if it so happens that you have things you would like to share or say, or you disagree or agree, feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section on the video, because I would love to hear more of what you have to say. Obviously, I could talk about this forever. I could easily go on for another 2.5 hours, but I'm going to show some restraint here. I'm going to go watch the film a second time, without a doubt, and I'm going to think about it some more. I doubt that I'm going to do another one of these, but like I said, if you want to talk about it in the comments on this video, feel free to do so. Yeah, I tap that. He leaves looking at 2 setting suns, referring to Luke. He leaves watching the binary sunset, just as he was looking to the future on Tatooine, wondering what's out there in the galaxy. And at the end of this film, he's seen it. He's seen it all. He knows what's in the galaxy, and he's at peace. And I think that was a really beautiful send-off for Luke Skywalker. Yeah, it was really quite something. Okay, just doing one quick last scan of the chat here. Yes, Kylo and Rey getting together. Shirtless Kylo. Yes, of course. Like I said, good looking man. Yeah, all right. Well, thank you all so much for coming out tonight, hanging out with me. I really wasn't sure how many people we'd get out here, but we've had a healthy number the whole time, kind of bumping along. You guys have been wonderful interacting in the chat here, and I really appreciate it, especially those of you who've stayed up late. I know it's late, you know, in eastern parts of North America right now, so I appreciate that. And I also, again, know that this is a pretty early discussion about the film because many people haven't seen it yet, but I'm hoping that they'll come and watch the video after the fact. I really wanted to talk about this, though, while it was still fresh in my mind, so... You know, it's my pleasure, Malin. Thank you all once again. It's wonderful having you out here and supporting these chats. It means a lot to me. I love hanging out with all of you guys, and I will certainly be streaming again. Probably not this weekend, but it is possible. No, it's not going to be this weekend, but next week at some point probably. So keep your eyes open for that. You can always follow me on the Twitters or on Facebook, or there's actually a new community tab in the on YouTube on my channel homepage. You can see it there, and I'm going to be posting updates there as well. And if you want to make sure that you get alerted about all those updates, please make sure that you have notifications turned on for my channel. That's the little bell icon next to the subscribe button. Make sure that those are enabled, and then you will get everything, alerts for what I post to the community tab. So that's another way we can stay connected if you like. Fantastic. Thank you all once again. Have an excellent night. It was wonderful chatting with you. If I don't see you face to face again before the Christmas season draws to a close, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody out there. I've got a couple of videos coming out, of course, before Christmas, and I will be live streaming at least once again before Christmas, but just in case I don't see you, Merry Christmas. And I look very forward to having you all back here next time. Bye for now, guys.